Now sliding over to the Eastern Conference, we did have a little bit of a flip in terms of um, the ending seeding positions. The Celtics are the seventh, the Wizards are the eighth, the Pacers are the ninth, and the Hornets are the 10th. Last week, Kyle and I actually went over this, and it was the Hornets at the eighth, the Wizards at the ninth, and the Pacers at the 10th. So everybody pretty much slid up a couple of spots. Boston stays the same. And the news, once again, just continues to fall. Bradley Beal is a lot more hurt than Kyle had initially anticipated, because I knew when Bradley got hurt that was pretty bad. And they're saying that he's going to be very, very limited coming into this game. So, I mean, even Bradley at 75%, could that help? Could that make it worse? Could it just end up being a Jason Tatum versus Russell Westbrook game? And if that's the case, I think I'm going to take the overall performance of Jason Tatum versus just the sole possession of Russell Westbrook. We all know what happens when Russell takes the show on by himself. We all saw it in OKC when Kevin left. They had a great record. He won an MVP, but they just could not win in the postseason. And again, even with Paul Pierce, what is wrong with me today? Even with Paul George in OKC, they still weren't able to win. Even with James Harden, they were incapable of winning as well. So I think it truly goes forth just to say, like, Russell Westbrook is more of a stat padding player, not taking away from his athleticism, his energy, the type of player that he is, but he's just not a postseason player. He's not a guy that's selfless enough to not shoot. He's not a guy that's going to take less shots to make his team better. So, like I said, if it comes down to it with just Russell and Jason, I think the Celtics squeak by, because Jason Tatum is just an electrifying young player, probably one of the best players under 25 this league's seen. And then we're going to go right into the Pacers and Hornets matchup. I'm going strictly with the Pacers, only because the Hornets also ended the season terribly on a 5-game skid, going 3-7 in their last games. And Domantas Sabonis has just been absolutely eating the league at a pace where no one's really giving him any respect. I mean, I'm pretty sure he averaged 20 points per game, 12 or 13 rebounds, and 6 assists for a 7-footer. It's pretty solid for a team that's this bad. And Caris LeVert has obviously come on strong after he had his procedure, and he's been playing very well, averaging, I believe, 21, 5, and 6. So that 1-2 combo with the obviously addition of Malcolm Brogdon. And I don't know if Miles Turner is hurt. I don't recall. I could be crazy. But, if Miles Turner is playing, I think that is a very well-rounded team to go out there and beat the basic duo of, LaMelo and Miles Bridges. I think that the Pacers have enough to go out there and take it. And then if it comes down to a Pacers-Wizards game, obviously Bradley Beal still being hurt. If that is the case, it is his hamstring, so I don't see him healing within a week. I think that'll be a pretty good game, but I think I'm going to switch up what I put last week. And just obviously because of Bradley's injury, I think I'm going to put the Pacers to get the 8th seed.
Yeah, for what I have for the Eastern Conference plan, we'll start with a 7-8 matchup between the Celtics and the Wizards. I'm actually going to go with the Wizards here, simply because I just hated the way that Boston closed out the end of the season. After Jaylen Brown went out with his wrist injury, this team I think it just lost it doesn't have the same life that it had when Jaylen was on the team. And I'm going to be honest with you, even when Jaylen was on the team, this team was not playing that well to begin with. They were basically struggling to stay 500 or better the entire season. And they finished 500 this season, correct?
Yeah, on the dot. Yeah, their last loss put them at 500.
So to me, this season has really been an interesting one for Boston, because I really thought that Boston would be a mid-level team, usually somewhere in between maybe the 4 and the 6 seed. But they just struggled throughout the entire year. And look, outside of the one win that they had against the Timberwolves this past weekend, this team was not playing that well. They lost to the Bulls. They lost to the Heat twice. They lost to the Cavs. They did beat the Wolves. And then they lost to the Knicks in the last game of the season. So they did not finish the season particularly well. And it obviously was exacerbated by Jaylen Brown not being there. And I just think you're putting way too much pressure on Jason Tatum to carry this team to the playoffs. Now, granted, with Washington, Bradley Beal is not 100%. We don't know whether or not that he's going to play in this playing game against Boston. I would like to think that he will. He might play on a minutes restriction just because everybody knows that that hamstring is not 100%. But I think Russell Westbrook is going to absolutely light it up. He's probably going to get somewhere around 25 points. Wouldn't surprise me. He gets at least 15 assists and 15 boards to go along with it as well. The one guy in particular that I'm looking at with the Wizards is Rui Hachimura. This kid has moments where he can flash and he can get you 20 to 25 points. And I like that matchup when you compare it against who I think the second best player offensively for Boston is, which is Kemba. I just like the matchup because I think Hachimura has somewhat of an advantage just as far as his scoring ability goes, because
he's like 7 inches taller than him.
But I'm not saying they're going to match up one-on-one. I'm just saying that the overall matchup of Hachimura going up against Boston's defense is going to be better than what I think Kemba is going to have to deal with, because I don't know who Kemba is going to get matched up with defensively. It's just that Kemba's been a little bit too inconsistent for me this year, and I just like the way that the Wizards finished off the season, and that was with Bradley even being hurt. So Russell did take a little bit more of the pressure. He did carry more weight when Bradley Beal was out, but he's been dynamite the last month or so. And I'm going to go with a little bit of – I'm just going to go where the wind takes me on this one, and I'm just saying that the Wizards got this one. So I believe that they would get the 7, right, if they win that matchup, correct?
The Wizards, they'd get the 7.
They would get the 7. And then when I look at the 8 matchup, or the whoever's going to get the 8th seed, if I had to pick a team here, I'd probably pick the Pacers to get the 8th. I think when I look at the teams across the board from 7 to 10, this team deserves to be in the playoffs just because Sabonis has been playing lights out this year. He's having a career year. I like what Karis LeVert has done with this team, even despite coming off the injury that he had from last season. And I think this Indiana team is just more deep than any of the teams that are left. I like their matchup against the Hornets. The Hornets are a little bit too young for me. Granted, they're very flashy. Miles Bridges just destroys the rim basically every game or every other game, and the announcers for Charlotte go absolutely nuts when he does so. It's just that I think they're going to run into a problem with Indiana, and I don't think the Hornets are just going to have enough firepower to match what Indiana's going to do. So I got Indiana winning that 9-10 matchup against Charlotte, and then I'm basically just going to reiterate why I think Indiana's going to get the 8th seed. It's just because I don't think Boston's going to be that competitive against Indiana. I just don't think they have the pieces to match up with them properly. I think Jason's going to go out there and probably get like 35, 40 points, but I don't think Boston's defense is going to be able to hold up against Indiana. Indiana has too many good players. You got to deal with Sabonis. You got to deal with Brogdon. You got to deal with Karis LeVert. And I think Indiana is just going to be too much for them to handle with. And I think, as crazy as it sounds, Boston is currently the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference, but I don't think they get in. I think they're going to lose 2 straight. And I think when I look at it, the Wizards are going to be the 7th seed, and the Pacers are going to round out the Eastern Conference at the 8th seed. That's how I have it.
Now, by some miracle, this man, the light-skinned guy from St. Louis, Missouri, Jason Tatum, just for whatever reason carries them to a playoff appearance. You and I are going to have to address a public apology to the Boston Celtics, because if this man goes out and hoops like that, Steph's been doing it all year. I'm just saying, I know that this kid can hoop. Like, I watched him in high school. I watched him in college. Like, Jason Tatum can ball out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the spotlight's on him. He never shies away from the moment. When you need him the most, he can be clutch. So I'm just saying, I genuinely think they can get one. And I think that the one game that they can get is this first one because of the injury to Bradley Beal. Even if Bradley plays him at a limited capacity, that's who they would put on Jason Tatum. Mm-hmm. So, Jason's going to have some buckets if Bradley's holding that hamstring most of the time. And Russell's going to be in some shit when he realizes his partner in crime, who's been hooping the second of the latter half of the year, and Russell's got to do it alone. I think the first opportunity is definitely going to be here. I think this is when they solidify their opportunity to get that 7th spot. But if they do fall for the first, I think they definitely fall for the second. Because I do think right now with the injury to Bradley Beal that the Pacers are a better team.
I don't disagree. It's just that for me personally, I think Washington's going to put everything they got into that 7-8 matchup against the Celtics. And I think Russell is going to put that team on his back and absolutely dominate that game. We'll see what happens.
He just can't. He can't have a Russell night where he's pulling like 15 middies and he only makes like 3 or 4 of them.
The question mark is Bradley. That's the main thing going forward into this game, and whether he's able to play or not. I think if he does play, I think he'll be okay. I don't know how useful he's going to be because that hamstring is probably going to bother him throughout most of the game. But I think the fact still remains, whether Bradley's in the game or not, I think Russell's going to absolutely cook in this game. I don't know why. I just got this feeling that I think Russell's going to go absolutely bonkers in this game and get Washington to that 7th seed. That's just kind of how I see it.